As President Zelenskyy is reportedly soon meeting with President Trump, fighting continues in eastern Ukraine with reports of Ukrainian forces taking back Kupiansk only last night. Kyiv is also weighing a revised U.S. Ukrainian peace framework aimed at ending Russia's full-scale war with the latest news, including a possible referendum if Russia agrees to ceasefire. To discuss the military situation on the ground and the political red lines Kyiv will not cross, I'm joined by Oleksii Reznikov, former Minister of Defense of Ukraine. Mr. Reznikov, thank you so much for joining me on the program.
Good evening.
So, we've heard the recent news of a possible referendum. President Zelenskyy revealed he's willing to bring that plan up for a referendum if Russia agrees to a ceasefire of at least 60 days. Will Ukraine give up land if such referendum takes place?
We will see what question would be included in this list for referendum, because you know that according to Ukrainian constitution, we cannot refuse to our territories. So it's also the serious task for diplomats how to write this question and publish it for people.
Mm-hmm. Let's also take a look at the front line, because there's been some developments. Ukrainian forces have reportedly taken back Kupiansk, something I mentioned before. Is this a significant win, and will it somewhat pave the way for Ukraine's defensive posture in the Donbass? Are we going to see situation change?
I would say that after this 4 years of this full-scale invasion, in February would be 4 years, Russia many times reported that they captured Ukrainian territory, huge Ukrainian territories. But if you will see on the map, you will see that they moved only probably 40 kilometers from the Donetsk line when they started this hybrid war. And all small villages, all small cities are real forepost of Ukrainian armed forces, strong forces, and all point of battle, we're trying to reduce their capacity to move forward and trying to grab our territory and go to the other cities. So that means that if Ukrainians still staying there, I mean Ukrainians armed forces, it means that Russia has not capacity to occupy Ukraine at all. That Russia is a really tiger piper, because this is not the question of numbers of the manpower. It's a question of technology, creativeness, and brave Ukrainians on the battlefield.
So how would you read into this demand that we've heard from Russia, demanding that Ukraine actually gives up control over the parts of Donbass? How realistic is such a scenario, especially considering that there's been a revision of a plan, and we're going to see a meeting on the 28th of December between President Zelenskyy and Trump to talk about it?
Frankly speaking, I heard it first time, it was 28th of February 2022. It was the first meeting on the Belarus territory on the Pripyat River. I was a member of the Ukrainian delegation. Just 4 days after full-scale invasion, we met with the Russian delegation, and they suggested us the soft style of capitulation act. The same demands was there. Territories, reducing of our armed forces, no NATO moving, Russian language, etc., etc., etc. So nothing new one. So for me, it's absolutely old story.
So as we're looking at those 20 points that President Zelenskyy is meant to present to President Trump, do you think that this signifies a somewhat meaningful improvement when it comes to this discussion about around the peace plan?
Yes, I hope so, because this is a negotiation process. It's not the first stage, it's not the last stage of the negotiation. And you remember we saw the first very hard and tough meeting in the Oval Office in February this year. But we see the progress. And I really hope that the United States, White House, and President Trump really want to finish this war. And they have real leverage how to push Russians to sit at the table and sign their real, fair, amicable agreement. And I hope this plan with the 20 points, it's a real platform for the good result.
a big part of the conversation around those first 28 points, now 20 points, is the security guarantees for Ukraine, a big topic of discussion. And the plan apparently includes Article 5-like security guarantees. Based on your experience as a defense minister, what makes a guarantee of such sort credible enough for Russia to be deterred and Ukraine to feel safe?
I think that if you will have the direct bilateral agreement with the United States, like Japan has, Israel or Taiwan, it would be absolutely doable conditions. Then Ukraine will believe that we have a serious security guarantees. It would be not the Budapest Memorandum, which Ukraine signed in 1994, refusing to have a third nuclear arsenal in the world. So we don't need the hypothetical memorandum. We need real agreement with the real partners, which really will help us in the case a new attack against the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm. And as we're looking at the 20 points, if Russia was to violate the ceasefire under the deal that was signed, do you believe that the West would actually make moves and respond militarily to yet another threat posed by Russia?
I think that it's an interest of the West to continue to invest in Ukraine, because this is a question of the security of the Europe as minimum. Because Ukraine is a real eastern flank of Europe, and we are really paying by our blood, and I hope that Europeans will not pay by their blood. So for the European countries, it's in the best scenario, they will help us with the weaponry, with a serious sanction regime against Russia, with the funds, because the war, it's a mess. It's a questions of the numerous things, not only manpower. We have a very serious experience how to fight with the Russians, how to beat them, how to defeat them, but we need resources. We need cutting-edge technology, we need finance, and we need other types of support. And we will win this war together.
From when we look at the plan from a different perspective, point 18 calls for presidential election soon after a deal is signed. In your view, does holding elections so quickly right after signing a deal and having a war ongoing for 4 years will strengthen Ukrainian democracy or perhaps expose the country to Russian interference from the outside?
Honestly, as you know, I'm a lawyer. So looking to the legislation, if we will have a ceasefire regime, so it means that our parliament will not provide prolongation of the martial law. According to our constitution, if martial law will stop, it means that during the 90 or 60 days, it will depend on the Central Election Committee decision, we have to provide elections running for president position, for members of parliament and local authorities, all city councils, villages, mayors, etc., etc. It would be normal democratic procedures for the Ukraine as we did it last 10 years as minimum, from 2004, 20 years, when we had Orange Revolution, a very famous event in our country. So absolutely sure that we will have normal elections in Ukraine. We will have president, members of parliament and city councils members as always. It's the European countries.
It appears to be the case that our time on the program is coming to an end, but just before we go, I wanted to ask you this final question. If you were to think of one thing, of one red line that Ukraine is not going to be willing to agree to during these conversations, perhaps and possibly leading to a final peace deal, what would it be?
I think that we will not bargaining by our territories. We will not bargain by our kids outside. We will not bargaining by the freedom of our prisoner of war. It's very important for us. The values of our lives, it's most values for us.
So the meeting taking place in 2 days, we're going to see President Zelenskyy and President Trump talks take place in Florida, and we will be covering more. Thank you so much. Oleksii Reznikov, former Minister of Defense of Ukraine, was my guest on World News Tonight. Thank you so much.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you too. Thank you. And so this would be all for now. Thank you so much for joining me on the program. And as we said before, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to you all and a very happy 2026. And I'm going to see you very soon.